The most valuable luxury clothing company in the world is Louis Vuitton. Its CEO, Bernard Arnault, has a net worth of almost $180 billion, making him the second richest person on the planet. When you consider the company's current prosperity, you would never believe that it was founded by a man who spent his adolescent years sleeping in the wilderness, was unemployed, and had no formal education. True rags to riches is the narrative of Louis Vuitton. However, the business would also be the focus of a hostile takeover, numerous litigation, and a number of other disputes. This is the crazy tale of Louis, and how a little family company became one of the most influential brands in the world. Louis was born in 1821 and spent his formative years in the remote French village of Anchay, working on the family farm. They lacked both running water and electricity. Louis' mother Corinne sewed hats to help supplement their family's income, while his father Xavier worked as a miller and farmer. There is no evidence in the records that Louis ever attended school. He is thought to have worked full-time on the family farm without learning how to read or write, because the closest school was 6 miles distant in a village. For the sole purpose of producing enough food to help feed his family, Louis would have been working in the fields every day from dusk till dawn. The Vuittons were obviously having financial difficulties, and infant Louis was born into a circumstance that should have prevented him from ever having a promising future. Things then became significantly worse. When Louis was only 10 years old, his mother passed away, and his father promptly wed a new woman. Louis, however, frequently fought with his new stepmother since she was so domineering and cunning with him. So at the age of just 13, he fled his home with the intention of traveling to Paris. He left without even saying goodbye when it was late at night. There was only one issue. Louis had neither money nor food, and Paris was 225 miles distant. He was consequently compelled to travel on unpaved roads. He typically slept in the woods with just a cloak to keep him warm and an empty stomach. In exchange for food or money, he would perform odd chores whenever he came across a new community. On the other hand, there was never enough money for housing. He thus proceeded to spend the night wherever he could find refuge, usually in the woods. Louis was able to pick up skills from master craftsmen through these numerous odd jobs, and he discovered how to work with metal, stone, fabric, and wood. His life will subsequently be transformed by this diverse skill set, but the pace of travel was very slow at this rate. To get to Paris, it took him 3 years. Louis was able to work as an apprentice boxmaker and packer not long after arriving in Paris. When a customer was getting ready to travel, box manufacturers would construct custom-sized boxes for them and pack and unpack them as well. He had the opportunity to interact with a lot of upper-class clients who needed specialized bags for their journeys thanks to his employment. Louis spent several years working here, honing his trade and giving it everything he had. In fact, the Empress of France became a client in 1851 and was impressed by his superb craftsmanship. He was given the job of becoming her personal packer and boxmaker. The majority of boxmakers would consider this to be the pinnacle of their professional success. Louis had transformed from a young man living on the streets with nothing to his name to someone who now had a prominent position among royalty. On its own, that was a tremendous accomplishment. However, Louis had even greater plans for the future. Louis built up his own box-making enterprise in Paris after getting married at the age of 33 and utilized his funds to launch his own company and began selling his own goods. Louis, you see, had discovered a serious fault in the day's luggage. Rain would slide off the top of the luggage because the leather cases all had rounded dome-shaped tops. The main problem was that they couldn't be stacked, so packers had to move the boxes one at a time. Louis started experimenting with alternative materials and discovered canvas to be lighter, more resilient, and more water-resistant, allowing the trunks to have flat tops instead. Everything became more effective as a result of their increased capacity to be stacked in a pile and packed into many trunks simultaneously. Modern baggage first appeared as a result of Louis' innovative suitcase design. Louis had already established relationships in the affluent class and his professional reputation at this point. As a result, as soon as he introduced his new line of baggage, it became a big success. In order for buyers to browse the things he had available and have them made before receiving them at their homes, he even produced a Louis Vuitton catalog. After only 2 years, his new luggage had become a status symbol for the wealthy and were seen as an elegant must-have accessory. Additionally, orders were coming in from all around the world because the brand had grown to be so well known. Even royals in distant countries like Egypt started giving him directives. Louis acquired enough money in 1859 to employ a group of artisans to assist him in completing his orders. He employed 20 workers and created a new workshop outside of Paris. Around that period, more and more people started using trains and boats for transportation. His potential clients multiplied tremendously as a result. No longer was travel exclusive for the wealthy. People from all walks of life now needed high-quality travel equipment. Louis appeared to have succeeded and would remain successful for the rest of his life. Sadly, such was not the case. As France was set to enter the war, tragic events were about to befall Louis once more. Louis was 49 years old when the Franco-Prussian War started in 1870. Louis was forced to leave his home and take refuge with thousands of other people in a small shelter. The food supply was so limited that he was afraid for his life. In 1871, when Louis could finally enter his shop again, everything had been destroyed. He had lost all he had worked so hard for because windows had been broken, equipment had been taken, and so on. Instead of abandoning up, he chose to utilize his money to start the company over, promising that this time it would be even better. There were a lot more vacant stores available for rent across the city because of the large number of individuals who had been displaced by the war. In order to capitalize on this, Louis opened a new store in a much more affluent and aristocratic area of Paris. This location was ideal because it was close to both the Grand Hotel and the train station, making it easy for customers who required new baggage to discover the Louis Vuitton store. He unveiled a completely new style of baggage in 1872 that was made of beige cloth and had stripes. People loved flaunting the contemporary style, and it quickly gained enormous popularity. Many competing businesses tried to imitate his style, but because of the absurdly high quality of his bags, clients still chose a genuine Louis Vuitton bag. Louis continued to work at this new store in Paris for the following 20 years until his passing at the age of 70. But thanks to his son Georges, who took over the family business, his legacy was allowed to continue. George wanted to take the company global, so he opened a well-known store in London. Louis Vuitton luggage was now so well-liked that several other box makers started producing knockoffs. To make it more difficult to imitate, George introduced the now iconic LV monogram in 1896. His father's initials, LV, were chosen to honor the person who founded the company. Additionally, he had the brilliant idea of installing a brand new lock on the trunks that would be virtually tough for burglars to pick. The business had 100 employees by the year 1900, and it kept expanding every year after that. All of the workers underwent extensive training to become skilled box manufacturers. Even today, LV staff must complete up to 2 years of training before being given the freedom to create one of the company's items on their own. Another fashion legend, Coco Chanel, inspired the company to start a completely new product line. She ordered a tiny purse with a dome form in 1925. This design was initially created by her and was intended only for her. Nevertheless, it would later be mass-produced and given the name Alma. As a result of its enormous success, LV started producing more compact leather bags, including the Keepall, Speedy, and No. Before LV, handbags were frequently viewed as extremely heavy and inelegant, but the company significantly contributed to their perception as being considerably more trendy. After George's death in 1936, his son Gaston Louis took over the running of the business. However, Gaston took over the business at a particularly challenging moment because France will soon be at war once more in a few years. Contracts were canceled during World War II, and Gaston was forced to close the Louis Vuitton factory. Once more, Paris was under siege. Gaston had to work with Nazi Germany in order to rescue the company. Louis Vuitton, a French saga, is a book written by Stéphanie Bonvicini. She requested access to papers from World War II so she could conduct research in the corporate archives. The firm representatives started attempting to withhold the facts from her almost immediately. They asserted that a fire completely destroyed all of the paperwork from 1930 to 1945. But after extensive research into other historical records, Stephanie learned that because LV worked with the Nazi regime, they were able to create a glitzy ground-floor storefront in the Hotel du Parc. Due to their refusal to assist the Nazis, a number of other companies were also compelled to cease operations. The corporation was obviously embarrassed by this chapter of their past. However, they would contend that Gaston took the necessary actions to ensure the survival of the business. Other fashion designers, such as Coco Chanel, also worked with the Nazis to prevent the destruction of her Parisian firm. Their brands would probably not still exist now if they had not chosen to cooperate with the enemy. Henry Racamire, Gaston's son-in-law, took over running the Louis Vuitton company after his death in 1970. We have thus reached the fourth generation. When Henry took over LV, he was able to take the company to a whole new level since, unlike his forebears, he had a lot of commercial knowledge from a previous company. In order to transform LV from a family-owned business into the enormous conglomerate it is today, Henry started making significant modifications to the Louis Vuitton brand. From a wholesale to a retail business strategy, he changed Louis Vuitton. He had reached many additional nations by 1978, including Japan. Sales increased from $20 million to $260 million over a period of 6 years, while accounting for contemporary inflation. Henry made the decision to go public with the company in 1984. The 1 million shares, each worth $63.63, were all sold out by Louis Vuitton. Henry started opening new stores all around the world as a result of the momentum and influx of money. LV's sales surpassed $1 billion in 1987. When Louis first established his store in Paris, it was well beyond anything the young man could have ever imagined. Henry also made the decision for the business to merge with Moet Hennessy, a premium beverage manufacturer of champagne and cognac. They also established the new luxury company LVMH as a unit. Theoretically, by coming together, they could pool resources and grow even more quickly. Unfortunately, Henry and the president of Moet Hennessy didn't get along following the merger. So Henry requested assistance from a reputable real estate developer he knew by the name of Bernard Arnault. Sadly, inviting him on board as an investor would be quite disastrous. In order to increase his influence within LVMH, Bernard surreptitiously acquired 43% of LV's shares and received backing from the Moet and Hennessy families. Henry took Bernard to court and demanded that he be stripped of the main ownership of Louis Vuitton because he thought that the person he had hired to assist him had deceived him. However, Bernard ultimately won in the courts. Henry chose to entirely leave LV since he was so furious over his friend's betrayal. For the first time in almost a century, the Vuitton family was no longer associated with the company. Following all of this controversy surrounding Bernard's hostile takeover, LV sales started to decline. The brand was no longer being covered by journalists. It appeared for a while that the business may fail. Bernard, though, was able to change the company's course for the better. When LV started working with many fashion designers for its 100th anniversary collection, it was able to make a comeback. Famous designers like Vivienne Westwood and Isaac Mizrahi each came up with their own interpretation of the recognizable LV monogram mark. They developed things that consumers had never seen before, and LV bags were once more in high demand. Bernard's investment in LV ultimately yielded enormous returns. He is currently LVMH's CEO. His net worth of more than $180 billion made him the richest individual in the world as of 2021, according to Forbes. His position on the wealthy list fluctuates naturally as stock values vary, but he consistently ranks among the top 5 richest persons on the planet. Bernard Arnault is undoubtedly the least well-known of the richest people, including Bezos, Musk, Gates, and Buffett, as he prefers to avoid the spotlight. We do know that Bernard has a reputation for being so cutthroat in business that he is known as the wolf in Kashmir. As a result of all the acquisitions and mergers Bernard has successfully completed, LVMH now owns over 70 different businesses. Many of the most opulent brands in the world are owned by this one business. But it all began with a young man who was homeless and broke. LV kept growing its brand in the modern era with fresh, vibrant looks that appealed to a younger clientele. Marc Jacobs was appointed creative director in 1997. In addition to designing the first ready-to-wear collection, he also produced the well-known Monogram, Bernard's collection of handbags. Although Marc Jacobs later left Louis Vuitton and launched his own brand of apparel and accessories, he also expanded LV into watches, jewelry, and sunglasses. Of course, there are problems with the company. If LV suspects that someone is replicating the company logo, they will not hesitate to file a lawsuit, because they have a whole staff of attorneys dedicated to looking for copyright infringement. Even Google has been sued by them for search engine results and adverts that direct users to bogus bags. Although they couldn't regulate what its users posted online, Google won the case. Additionally, LV has worked with companies like Supreme, which has significantly broadened their target market. However, it's true that LV did file a lawsuit against Supreme for stealing their logo. until they recognized how successful a partnership would be. The price of LV Supreme resale items has increased recently. The leather trunk, for instance, is being sold for $125,000, and the LV Supreme sweatshirt costs more than $5,000. LV has obviously struggled with counterfeiting since the beginning of the company, and they estimate that every year they lose hundreds of millions of dollars to inferior copies of their items. But despite operating for 168 years, they don't appear to be slowing down anytime soon. A favorite of the wealthy and famous, LV continues to be a brand that many people desire to wear. They are currently the most valuable fashion brand in the world, with a $39 billion market cap. With more than 400 locations worldwide, LV can be found in almost all major cities. How do you feel about Louis Vuitton, though? Do you believe that the price tag is excessive given all the hoopla? Or do you believe that the product's high quality merits it? Please leave a comment below, and don't forget to leave a like. Cheers!